So growing up, I remember people telling me, high school is the best time of your life. All the adults would be telling me like, enjoy high school while you still have it because things are only going to get harder from there. Life's only going to get harder from there. And I remember looking at them and thinking, are you crazy? Because when I was in high school, I couldn't imagine that being the peak of my life. I remember thinking like, if life is this hard already, how much harder is it going to get for me? And don't get me wrong, like I would see the people around me, some of my friends, my classmates, having fun, who looked like it genuinely was the time of their lives. Going to all these parties, doing the things that a teenager looks back on when they get older. But I couldn't enjoy any of that because I was so quiet and shy. You see, I was always naturally shy from when I was younger. But back when I was like, primary school age, it was never a problem. I was still happy. I still had loads of friends, but it became a problem when I joined high school. When I joined high school as this kid from like a new area who didn't know anyone, and I just didn't have any friends for 2 years, bro. I really, really struggled to settle into that new school. It's kind of tragic. Like you go from not having any cares or worries when you're younger, not having any of this anxiety, to just in a couple of years being a teenager and being so self-conscious, having these anxious thoughts near constantly. All of a sudden people were picking on me for being that quiet kid, for not really having any friends. And, my way of defending myself was to shut down even more. I thought, right, if I speak to this person next to me in class, they've already shown that they're going to bully me if I open my mouth. So I've just got to not say anything. I've just got to not let them in, and then they can't hurt me. And something that used to really trigger my anxiety was that little period before morning registration. So like I would arrive to school maybe like half an hour earlier, like I'd get the bus or my mum would drop me off, and then I'd just be thinking, fuck, like I've got nothing to do before I go to class. And some of my like classmates, maybe some kids I didn't get on very well with, they'd be hanging out outside the classroom, like outside the building. And generally people would all go and like speak to each other, you'd meet up with your classmates. But if I saw like one or two people who'd maybe bullied me, I'd be like, fuck it, no, I'm not going over there. So I literally would head into the bathrooms and just lock myself in one of the cubicles. I was that scared. Like, you think this kind of thing only happens in films? Like, I feel like that's like a bit of a high school stereotype, like the kid who's just like in the cubicle on his own. But that's what my life turned into. That's how bad this got. And over time, that reputation I built for being this silent, invisible kid kind of spread around other classes, and it became this whole joke that everyone was in on. Like now I'm the new kid. Like people would make jokes like I was so quiet that they hadn't seen me before, like they didn't know who I was. And that only made it even worse. I just want to keep to myself, and now I have people joking that I'm some school shooter. Like people I've never spoken before are coming up to me and making fun of me. Like I don't even know who these people are. And after a while that really began to mess with my head. Because when people are saying certain things about you, when you think that everyone sees you in a certain way, that's when you start to believe it yourself. And people were telling me that they didn't know who I was, treating me like I was insignificant. And I really began to internalize that. I thought that I just didn't matter, that it's me who's the problem. I'm just this socially awkward freak who no one would ever want to spend time with. So if you've related to anything I've said in this video so far, if you've been that shy, quiet kid at any point of your life, if you felt like you were missing that perfect high school experience that everyone talks about, I want to give you some hope that you can change, that it's not too late to break out of that mold. Because years later I've realized that it was never my social skills that were the problem. It wasn't necessarily a problem with me. Despite how awkward and anxious I felt, it was never really a question of social skills. Because I like to tell people I've actually embraced that more naturally introverted side of myself. I'm still quite a quiet person, But the difference is it hasn't stopped me from getting that dream social life that I've always wanted. It hasn't held me back like it used to. So I'm going to explain to you how I overcame that shyness. So first of all, why is this not an issue of social skills? So you might think you're just this awkward person, that you struggle to have conversations in the same way that other people do, that you're just a little bit different. And whilst that might be true, I'd argue that if you are around your friends, if you're around a group of people who really know you well, who accept you, would you still have the same problems? Would you still feel anxious? Would you still feel awkward? Because I like to argue that everyone has these inherent social skills that they can unlock. It's just more about the level of comfort they feel when it comes to the people around them. So I used to have this thing where around my friends, I'd be very open, I'd be very energetic. Like around anyone else, I'd be more introverted, but around people I trusted, I'd almost be a bit of an extrovert. I'd feel very comfortable in the presence of these people, like very able to be myself. But if you introduced like a new person, like a stranger into that group, then that would entirely throw me off. Then I'm second guessing myself. Then I don't feel like I can express myself and be open. Like I'm just filled with anxiety. But just because I felt that way doesn't mean that my social skills just didn't exist anymore. It was more a case of like something else coming into the equation and making me feel less comfortable expressing myself. So as you can tell, it was probably more about me feeling self-conscious around people that I didn't know, around people who I felt were capable of judging me. So there's something I want to tell you. This is specifically the point I'm trying to get across right now. Tell me the amount of rejections you've had this year. Tell me the amount of times you've been rejected, and I'll tell you how good of a social life you have right now. Through years of pushing myself through this social fear, through years of intentionally subjecting myself to all these awkward and painful experiences, stuff that I would have run a mile from when I was in high school, this is one of the most important lessons I have to pass on to you. And that is to get comfortable with rejection, because it will change your life. So growing up as that quiet kid, I told you about how I would shut down around people I didn't know, or people who picked on me or something like that, as a way of defending myself from being hurt again. So I'd felt that they'd already rejected me. They wouldn't want anything else to do with me. And I kind of just assumed that this is how everyone else would view me as well. That if I opened myself up to the rest of the world, I was immediately just going to get hurt. I was going to get rejected. So I let a few traumatic experiences kind of really cloud my vision, really like hold me back from expressing myself, from taking those chances, from taking the risk. And honestly, it really was only a couple of experiences that were really traumatic, that really put the fear of God in me and like stopped me from having that social life. But that's the thing, like that is human nature. Humans can go through like hundreds and hundreds of positive experiences. Like, just to give you an example, like I could get 100 positive comments on this video telling me, oh, this was a really helpful video, Tom, like this really helped me. But then if I get one negative comment, I guarantee you that is the one comment that's going to stick in my mind. Someone who's like making fun of me or like giving me some shit. That is like the human brain. Like we have this negativity bias where we let one or two negative experiences start changing the course of our life when things might have been going quite well before that. And I let that stop me from taking more risks in my social life, even like in my dating life. Stop me being that person who's brave and willing to take a shot when it might not go well for me all the time. And again, if that's sounding somewhat relatable for you, you need to follow this advice, because you are the person who needs to bulletproof yourself mentally from rejection. You need to intentionally expose yourself to take those chances in those situations where you risk getting rejected. I remember when I was first really trying to upgrade my social life, when I was taking so many chances with people, like I'd be on like a night out and I'd meet someone, like I'd just start a conversation in the smoking area or something, and I'd speak to someone new and the irrational part of my brain was telling me, this person doesn't really like you. This person doesn't really want to spend any more time with you. They're just kind of doing it because the situation has brought you together. But I'd turn off that part of my brain and I'd always ask this person for their contact details. Like, I took that risk that I could get rejected by asking them, like, do you ever want to hang out again? Like, let me get your Snapchat or something. Like, let's go for a drink some other time. I put myself in that situation where I risked getting rejected, and 90% of the time, it would turn out okay. As my comfort level grew, as it got easier to express my true personality around people, I found out that I am naturally quite a likable person. But even in those 10% of situations where the person wouldn't want to hang out again, where they'd like leave my text on read or something, I'm not gonna lie, at first that would hurt. Like that did make me wince a little bit. I'd be thinking, what did I do wrong? But then I'd just be moving on so fast because I'm operating with this abundance mindset. I'm literally just like, right, on to the next one. And when you get in that frame of mind where you don't mind getting rejected, where you're just all about taking chances, like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, then the 1% of rejections that you do get, honestly, you start to get like buzzed off of them. And this applies to the cold approach as well. Like, now I have a big sample size of approaches. Now I've done quite a lot of them. Even when I get rejected, even when it's very, very clear that this girl just wants me to go away, I still get buzzed off of that. Like I'm still like riding this like wave of adrenaline. I've just taken a risk. Like I've done something bold today, and no one can take that away from me. So those are the experiences you should be looking to gain. These positive reference experiences where you've taken a chance. You've put yourself in that situation where you could risk looking a little bit stupid. You could risk getting judged, but it turned out okay. Regardless of the outcome, you were still okay. You're not gonna let that stop you getting what you deserve. And that is how I proved to myself that I was more than just this silent kid.